Guys, we're back. We're talking more about our unit circle, okay? If you'll remember, we came up with these very important relationships with this unit circle, the circle of radius 1, centered at the origin, okay? And they are shown here, okay? That the x is synonymous with the cosine of alpha and y is synonymous with the sine of alpha, alpha being the angle of rotation. We now want to identify what's going on in each of our quadrants, okay? In each of our quadrants. Now, of course, we know the positive, in quadrant 1, we have positive x and positive y, okay? Positive x and positive y. In quadrant 2, we know we have a negative x and a positive y, okay? In quadrant 3, we know we have a negative x and a negative y. And in quadrant 4, of course, we know we have positive x and negative y. Now, okay, one further thing, if we will, is the tangent. We didn't talk about that previously, but the tangent, okay, of angle theta is going to equal the opposite over the adjacent, as you know from SOHCAHTOA. So that's y over x, but y was synonymous with the sine of alpha, and x was synonymous with the cosine of alpha. So as not to get that confused, x and y are alphabetical, as are c and s, okay? So that's associating cosine with x and sine with y. Okay? Now, what's happening with the sine, cosine, and tangent in each of these quadrants? Okay? In each of these quadrants. Well, okay, since in quadrant 1, x is positive and y is positive, it follows that the sine is positive and the cosine is positive. And since we now just shown that the tangent is the ratio of the sine over the cosine, well, it follows too that the tangent is positive. So we're going to say in quadrant 1, all of our three major trig functions are positive. In quadrant 2, we see that the cosine, which is synonymous with x, is negative. The sine, which is synonymous with y, is positive, and of course a positive over a negative for the tangent would also yield us a negative. So in quadrant 2, we're saying that the sine is the one to remember as being positive. The other two are going to be negative. In quadrant 3, cosine, which is our x, is negative. Sine, which is our y, is negative, and their ratio, which is our tangent, is going to be positive, okay? So then we're going to remember in quadrant 3, the tan is the positive one of the three, okay? And lastly, in quadrant 4, okay, our cosine of being the x is positive, our sine being the y is negative, and our tangent being the ratio of those is going to be a positive over negative, yielding a negative, which is going to identify in quadrant 4 as the cosine being the positive one to concern ourselves about. So as we move around from quadrants 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, we remember in quadrant 1, all are positive, all sine, cosine, and tangent. In quadrant 2, we remember it's the sine that is positive. In quadrant 3, we remember it's the tangent that is positive. And in quadrant 4, we remember that it is the positive value is the cosine. So as a little mnemonic, we will say all study trig carefully. And that would show you in which quadrant, okay, each of those angle sweeps, each of those values are going to be positive and or negative. And of course, we'll go in the next video and describe the kind of problems we're going to face with there. But just remember, all study trig carefully.